Hello. So, Star Trek Discovery Season 5 has completed the fifth and final season of Star Trek Discovery. And I'm very sad that the show is over, but very happy that it existed. Um, let's just start off with my complaints. Let's start off with the things I didn't like about the final season. Detmer and Woshkin were completely written out. Yeah, they got very small roles in the first few episodes, and then just gone from the series. I did not like that because I loved that Miranda Woskin. They were so good. They were such a fun pair. I honestly like. I want them to be the stars of their own show because they just had such a great chemistry together. Those two actors just had a great chemistry together. Um, so yeah, that's what I didn't like. Other than that, I enjoyed basically everything about this season. Um, the fact that they brought back something from the next generation was very cool with the progenitors. Yeah, just going back to like a pretty memorable episode of Next Generation with various species trying to find this ancient technology, which turned out to just be a message from the ancient species that seeded humanoid life in the galaxy. That was very bringing that plot line back. That was very cool. Um, it was a good episode of Next Generation, and then it's searching for their technology. Yeah, that is interesting. That is a neat way to go. Um, Maul and Locke made for really compelling antagonists. Just very yeah, very cool, interesting characters. Their relationship was definitely one of the really cool parts of the series. Um, New first officer in Raymer. Raymer was great. He was a really cool character. Someone who's sort of used to the way the galaxy used to be, who's sort of used to a Wild West version of the galaxy, having to adjust to what is more to a more diplomatic era, and his struggles with with adjusting to that. He had made for a really interesting character arc. Like this very Kirk-like character. He's sort of like, well, I don't want to say Kirk-like because Kirk was, but I mean, kind of. It's kind of Kirk-like, albeit generally a little bit more aggressive than Kirk usually would have been. But that kind of frontier um, frontier command, that frontier style of sort of doing a little, being a little bit more aggressive than Star Trek usually has its captains being. And then having him to have to adapt to almost a more next generation style of next generation era style of no, you can't go off on your own anymore. Yeah, it's interesting. Also, he's just kind of he's just adorably grumpy. It's just cute how grumpy he was the whole series, the whole season. Um, the Breen, learning more about the Breen because they were a very interesting threat in uh, Deep Space Nine, late in Deep Space Nine. They were only they were really only introduced in seventh season, late in the seventh season. Yeah, there'd been references to them before that and everything, but they didn't really become a threat until then. So them becoming, getting some more exploration of their species, their culture, what they're like, what their values are, their form of government. It's that was very cool to see. It's always I always it's always great when an alien species gets elaborated on. The more mysterious they are, the more you want to learn about them. And the Breen were a very mysterious race, very mysterious species. So that was cool. Then they were, depicted as a sincere, as a genuinely serious threat. Maybe almost a little too big a threat, if I'm being honest, but uh, also library. There was an yeah, the Eternal Gallery and Archive. I went to college for library technician, library and information technician. Libraries and archives, those things are always going to be dear to my heart. So, loved seeing the Eternal Archive. Great place. The and there were a lot of other really cool locations introduced as well. A lot of really interesting planets and cultures introduced, and explore and touching on some established ones in interesting ways as well. Um, the whole mystery the whole search and finding the clues and trying to figure out the clues. That was definitely a really great build on that Next Generation episode. The way it was sort of building on, the way it was sort of examining various clues to try to get to the next one. That Next Generation episode sort of did that as well. And so I liked that aspect of the season. And it showed the characters being, it showed how clever they are, and also allowed an exploration of their values and morals and everything, because that was sort of a big part of them, was learning lessons. Um, and I mean, that's always been a big part of Star Trek, is the moral values, the moral lessons. And this episode really did that. This season really did that. It really did have a strong emphasis on the humanity of the crew. That human element that is core to Star Trek. drive to find answers. Um, and values of compassion as well, and also like the importance of using technology responsibly, and questions of how to do that. Um, with the series over, like Burnham's journey over the course of the series was really interesting to see. And I like that we got a little bit of a callback to her first season. We saw, like, we did get to see season one Burnham again. And see how far she's come since then. From being a criminal, someone who did not believe that she was worthy of redemption, to the to being a captain and someone that her crew trusted and respected and liked. Seeing her embrace her humanity, re-embrace her drive for answers, her belief in other people. It makes for a very compelling arc over the course of 5 seasons. And Tilly as well. Really compelling arc that she's had over 5 seasons. From being a fresh-faced, over-eager ensign cadet, I think, actually, at the start, to being a teacher, someone who has learned to believe in herself and who wants to help others learn to believe in themselves. Again, great arc. Burnham and Tilly are sort of... we're always kind of the heart of the series. Saru, again, going from someone who struggled with fear, and to someone who's kind of fearless. Action Saru. And again, like, it goes back to the first season. Saru and Burnham sort of made up during the first season. But again, I love how close those two became. Like in the first episode, she was first officer of the ship and he was second officer, I believe. They, occasionally, there were indications that they occasionally butted heads, but respected each other. And then, obviously, Burnham's mutiny happened, and took most of the first season for him to start trusting her again, and then throughout the rest of the season, throughout the rest of the series, he does trust her implicitly, and she sort of trusts him just as implicitly. They became family. And speaking of Sorrel, I liked his. I liked his art. I liked his little relationship with the Vulcan ambassador. They made a cute couple. Stamets and Culber, great. And again, we see Stamets character arc. In the first season, he was arrogant, angry, just generally unpleasant to be around. And by season 5, he is still a little bit arrogant, but he's jokey, he's cheerful, he's friendly. He's got his adopted child with Adira. Shame that Adira and their boyfriend, Gray. Shame that Adira and Gray ended up breaking up. But... And we didn't really get a whole lot of Stamets and Culber as a couple in this season. There were some nice moments, though. And Culber himself got a really good arc in this season. Of being sort of overwhelmed by what they were doing, looking for the source of life. Touching on sort of his spiritual side and how it sort of connects with his medical side, his scientific side, and how he tries to reconcile those. And it just made for a really interesting arc for him. And I liked his relationship with Booker. Those two, they play off each other really well. They've got they're a good friendship. Booker himself, again, always delightful. Always enjoy Booker. He's just really fun. And him and Burnham are just such a fun pair. You can tell the actors really like each other, really like, acting against each other. Because they're just so damn charming together. And without spoiling anything, I'll also note that I liked call it an epilogue, sort of flashing to the future, going to the, seeing, however long in the future it is. One thing that was interesting, Burnham's old age makeup looked believable. I was rewatching Deep Space Nine not long ago. And I've rewatched other Star Treks, and time was, whenever someone was given old age makeup, it they'd give Julian Bashir old age makeup, and then you look at what Alexander Siddig looks like today, and it's Jesus, dude is a silver fox. He does not look at all like they imagined he would look. It's a lot of actors. The old age, they just cake on some makeup, and here's some jowls and lulls and wrinkles all over, and 30 years later, the actors still look genuinely hot. They look nothing like how the makeup made them look. But I can absolutely imagine Sonequa Martin Green looking like that in 30 years or 40 years or however long it is in the future. Yeah, I can absolutely imagine her looking that way in the future when she's old. It looks, it was realistic old age makeup, which was nice to see. You don't see it a lot in Star Trek. It was a minor, like it's a very minor thing to comment on, but yeah. So yeah, it was a great season. Great season and a very Star Trek season. In that it was scientific exploration as a way of exploring the human condition, because that's what Star Trek always was. Uh, and I do feel like Discovery was usually really good at that in general. Even in the first season, I think that they did. The first season was very much about Federation Klingon War, but even then there was still elements of scientific exploration as a metaphor for exploring the human condition. So, yeah, I'm really sad to see the series end. Especially because like each season was shorty. First season I think was 15 episodes. Every season after that was 10. And it's had such a great cast that it absolutely would have thrived with longer seasons with 170 season episodes. Yeah, if it got the same number of episodes that Star Trek used to get. Unfortunately, of course, we don't live in the same era as Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, Voyager, when those shows came out. Television has changed. And I think when people complain about Discovery not being real Star Trek, I mean, there's the people who are just pissed off you know, about it being a legitimately diverse show that centered people of color, women of color, queer people. Tilly was body positivity thing. So like there were people who were just pissed off about it being woke. The Star Trek wasn't always woke. So like there are the people, there are that segment who just hate it because it actually believes in the idea of infinite diversity in infinite combinations. There are the people who hate that. But outside of that, there are also people who hate Star Trek Discovery for its format more than anything else. They think of Star Trek as being largely one and done episodes. Um, not necessarily free of continuity, but for the most part, one episode isn't going to have a huge impact on the next. Um, most episodes kind of self-contained. I think people are I think there are people who are hung up on that format. Which was just, how television was largely done back in the days when those shows were being made. In the 60s for the original series, and then late 80s into the 90s for Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, Voyager. Yeah, it was fairly common for, because this is before the days of streaming, so it was fairly common for a lot of shows, aside from soap operas and a few others, to be designed to be mostly self-contained episodes. So if you missed one episode, you weren't going to be completely lost for the most part. Discovery did, or Deep Space Nine, a little bit different, especially the last few episodes. Um, that the last few episodes of Deep Space Nine were really just this leads into this, into this, into this, into this. But other than that, I mean, you'd have episodes that would call back to each other. You'd have sort of mini arcs of a few episodes straight that were very much connected to each other. But you also had the softball episode. Next Generation, you had Data's Day. There were always those very much bottle episodes, as I believe they were called. Next Generation and Voyager both did Lower Deck episodes as well, which Discovery never really got a chance to do. So I mean, that was what Star Trek was for a lot of us growing up. That is not how TV works anymore, though. Star Trek Discovery was Star Trek for the modern viewing experience. It's how TV shows are told these days, with longer arcs, season long arcs. That's that's very much more common these days with streaming services, because you're not watching it week to week to week. I mean, you are, but it's not. It's not that it's on this time on this channel, and if you miss it, tough luck. It's streaming, so you just go on whenever you feel like. Even wait until the whole season is done and binge it all at once. So it's longer form storytelling than what Star Trek was back then. And a lot of people don't, there are people who don't like that. I think that Discovery does it well. I think Discovery did that well. And it made it for a modern Star Trek. And I never stopped loving Star Trek, so I can't say that it reignited my love of the franchise, but it did continue my love of the franchise. I'm sitting there thinking, man, I should get some Star Trek T-shirt or Star Trek memorabilia. I don't know. I kind of like it because when I was a kid, I collected. I had a subscription to Star Trek magazine for a little while, and I bought a couple of the Star Trek books. I bought a book that was came out during, I think it came out after the second season of Voyager had finished. But it was just sort of a book about the franchise up until that point. I don't remember what the book's called or anything like that. Yeah, it makes me want to read about the franchise again. I had the blueprints for the Enterprise D. I did have that. I never really got com badge or Spock ears or Enterprise telephone or any of that kind of thing. More just things for reading about the franchise. Things that would be occasional behind the scenes elements, and I don't know, it makes me kind of want to get back to that. I kind of miss those days. But anyway, point is, I loved Star Trek Discovery. I always did, right from the start. Um, I was invested from minute one. Basically from from the time that I heard that there was going to be another Star Trek TV show. At least from the time I heard there was going to be another Star Trek TV show that wasn't set in the Kelvinverse. The Kelvinverse. Because I'm sorry, I hated the J.J. Abrams movies. Despised the two movies he made. Beyond, not so much. Beyond wasn't actually bad. But the two movies that Abrams himself directed, loathe. I loathe those movies. Um, so, when I found out that Discovery was not going to be sort of following what Abrams had set up, from that moment on, I was invested. And I pretty much always enjoyed it. There have been a few moments here and there where I was like, eh. But for the most part, I just loved the series from start to finish. And I'm very sad that it's over. But I am happy that I got to watch it. Next up, I believe Star Trek Prodigy. I believe July 1st, I think, if I'm not mistaken, is when it starts releasing on Netflix. Because Paramount was stupid and didn't renew it themselves. So Netflix picked up Prodigy. So I will be looking forward to that because Prodigy was a great show that didn't really get the love it deserved. And certainly didn't get the love it deserved from Paramount itself. So I will look forward to that. There's going to be another season of Strange New Worlds. There is going to be Star Trek Academy that is going to be spun off from Discovery. And I think that's also for people who complain about Discovery, it keeps spinning off shows. Strange New Worlds spun off from it. Lower Decks wouldn't exist with it, even though it didn't spin off from it, but it wouldn't exist without Discovery. Prodigy wouldn't exist without Discovery. The upcoming Academy wouldn't exist without Discovery. And I look forward to that one. That should be fun. We've already got a casting announcement for it. So yeah. I am a big fan of Star Trek Discovery, and I'm glad the show existed. So that's my thoughts. I don't know if anyone else watching me actually even watches Star Trek. But if you did watch Discovery, let me know what you thought of it. But for now, thanks for watching. And live long and prosper.